This is The Jason Jones Show, powered by Mudhouse Media. Now, here's Jason Jones.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to The Jason Jones Show. I am your host, Jason Jones, broadcasting from the beautiful hill country of Texas. If you are listening to this show in the year 2100, and somebody is, I can promise you that. If you are listening to this show in the year 2100, and you are living in a culture of life, a civilization of love, you wake up every morning and you're like, I am so grateful that I live in a society grounded in a respect for the human person. I know that in the 20th century, we came out of a century of genocide, democide, horror, abortion. It was unbelievable. But then there was a movement, the pro-life movement, that for a 50, 60, 75, 80 years, they marched the world into a culture of life. And you're looking back, like, who was the leader of the most consequence? Well, it's probably my guest today. And you know that. That's why you're listening to the show, because I believe that my guest today, when this movement unfurls, I love that word, unfurls, when this movement unfurls over the coming decades, will be the leader probably that has had the greatest impact. Why? Because she is the president and founder of Students for Life of America, Kristan Hawkins. And Students for Life of America is the most vibrant and active campus organization in America. I'm not just talking pro-life or conservative, because SFLA, I wouldn't be called a conservative organization. Its members are across the spectrum, but what they're committed to is protecting the vulnerable from violence, starting with the child in the womb. And I've watched over almost 2 decades now, I've watched Kristan Hawkins work, and she is a young woman. She graduated college at 19, has been in the pro-life movement since she was 15. And so in her young life, over the past 2 decades, she has built the most influential campus organization in the country. And so I'm going to interview her on the pro-life generation. But before I do that, I need to remind you that this episode is being brought to you by MyPillow.com. Go to MyPillow.com, use the secret code Jones. In the radio listener square, in the promo box, you put in the secret code Jones, and you will get deep discounts on all My Pillow products. Go over there. Also, this episode is being brought to you by the Epic Times. The first place you need to go every morning is to Epic Times. Go to ireadepoch.com. Use the code Jason Jones to get a great deal on the print and digital subscription. And as always, this show is being brought to you by the Vulnerable People Project. We are standing in solidarity with the vulnerable in the most challenging places in the world. This week, we are putting security cameras up in schools across Afghanistan. This week, we are drilling wells and refurbishing a medical center for women in a very remote part of Afghanistan. This week, we are working around the world to advocate for the vulnerable, and we need you to help us. So go to thegreatcampaign.org and become a monthly donor and stand with us as we stand with the vulnerable. On with the interview with the great Kristan Hawkins from Students for Life of America. Jason Jones Show. Aloha, Kristan Hawkins. Welcome to the Jason Jones Show.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Good to be back.
It's great to have you on. I'm doing 49 days in a row celebrating the overturning of Roe of what I like to call explicitly pro-life podcasting. Do you like that?
You're so funny. It's just like your Pupils for Life idea.
Pupils for Life?
A couple years ago.
Yeah, you like that? It didn't work out, though.
You call me like, no, it never worked out. I'm surprised.
No, what did I call you? Tell what had happened?
You called me one time. You said, I had this great idea. I just want to let you know I'm launching a new organization. and this, well after Students for Life had been up and running, saving babies and changing minds of campuses. And you were like, I'm just going to launch a new organization. We called Pupils for Life.
Oh yeah, Pupils for Life. I forgot about that. Pupils for Life of America. It never took
you were
off.
serious for like 5 minutes, but then I figured out you weren't serious. Yeah.
Pupils for Life. Well, yeah, but it's going to be only at optometry schools of optometry. How would I say that?
There you go.
So it would be a pun. You see there?
Ophthalmology.
Ophthalmology. It's a pun. It's a play on words. Well, the reason you believed me, because in our movement, there's a lot of that, right? There's a lot of people see, ooh, that's working over there. Let me do that instead of what it is I was doing.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's probably why you.
Right. I've seen it. I've sadly seen that many times over the years. I don't get as stressed out as I used to by those kind of claims anymore, because I've come to realize that what we do at Students for Life is really freaking hard. And while it might sound like a really good idea, it's very hard. And so I've had a couple, over the years, folks get mad or they don't like something that we do or something we don't do. And they'll say, well, I'm going to start my own competing pro-life youth organization. And now I'm just like, yep, good luck with that one.
And good, by the way, if you succeed. Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. If you can get that to happen, go for it. I'm doing my very freaking best over here, working like crazy, building up our team of over 100 staff. It keeps us very busy. And so I realize that I am not the be-all, end-all of ideas and strategies, but it is, what we do in culture change is sometimes can be hard to be measured. But it is so important. And the important part is you just keep moving forward and you keep trying new things, even when you fail.
Yeah, fail forward. And that's why, first of all, I used to believe, in all humility, I used to sit there at night and think, wow, I am the hardest working person in the pro-life movement. Wow, nobody in the movement works harder than me. I would think that. And then I started observing you from a distance, and I'm like, oh, wow. Kristan Hawkins works a lot harder than me. I still think I'm in second place.
I know a lot of people on our staff who probably work harder than me. I mean, these are some of these. I mean, these people, these are young kids who, a lot of them single women who are driving 8 hours to get to a campus to host a training, to set up a display. I mean, they are so hardworking. This generation continues to blow me away with how passionate, how just dedicated they are to this cause.
No, I believe that Students for Life of America. What are you doing? I feel like you're shuffling paper. You're like playing poker.
I'm cleaning.
Are you cleaning? I love it. I often will do podcasts and conference calls while lifting weights.
Yeah, it's a Monday, Jason. You got me on Monday. It's a little nuts out here.
Well, this is the thing. You're a mom. You're apparently running from the FBI because you're never in the same place more than 1 or 2 days. You use a burner phone. I can only communicate with you through chalk marks on mailboxes. But so you are a hardworking. I mean, the hardest working person I have observed in the pro-life movement.
Thank you.
And you also are a mom and a wife. So you are allowed to clean. Just you have to clean quietly.
Okay. I'll try to be real quiet. I'll be real quiet.
Now I believe.
Yeah, no. I was telling my husband yesterday. I'm like, I've never been more grateful to not have a home, because we sold our home and we travel the country full time, than I am now, with all the threats coming in and the nasty voice messages and phone calls and text messages and DMs and tweets and all of that. I mean, I've never been grateful to not have an address. My mom's like, keep your address our address, because your dad has a gun. We're good.
You looking for my daughter?
Bad indictment.
You here looking for my daughter? Came to the wrong house. Yeah, that is true. I mean, when there's bounties out, I've made a lot of money off of you because I can keep making money off you.
Maybe you're the reason why a bunch of crazy people are coming on CNN or NPR. They as soon as they get done the interview, I start getting hate calls, and I'm like, where the heck is my phone number published?
Well, I get $250 each time I let them know where you are.
Well, see, there you go. Thank you. I
And
appreciate
because
that.
every day, it's like I'm making $250. That's what I'm hey, Kristan, where are you now? What are you doing? Where are you
Stop
guys?
answering that question.
So
I'm going to stop answering that question next time you ask me.
all right, so you and I met in 2006.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you were you graduated college already, but you were only 21. Is that correct?
Yeah, I graduated college at 19. So I had been out working for a while before I started Students for Life. But yeah, I was pretty young, newlywed.
That's unbelievable. How did you graduate college at 19? How does that happen?
I'm an overachiever. My mom always used to say I was in a hurry. So yeah, I graduated high school a year early, and then I graduated college a year and a half early. I got involved in the pro life movement when I was 15, and I just, I knew what I wanted to do, I had some idea of what I wanted to do in college. I would have probably told you I was going to eventually become a lawyer, but now I kind of detest lawyers. Although I have some really great lawyers who keep me out of trouble, but once I got involved in the pro life movement, it was very clear what I wanted to do with my life. And so there really wasn't a point in wasting more time, as I saw it, in high school, or spending an extra year in college just to have fun, when I could have gotten out there and got working and get going towards my goal.
So the reason you rushed graduating high school and college was to be a pro-life activist?
Yeah, it's one of the reasons. Yeah, for sure. It's probably one of the largest ones. But I mean, you guys abolish abortion, Jason, and you only got so many years in your life to do it.
That's true. And okay, so we met on a campaign to keep cloning out of Missouri.
Yeah, that was a ballot. It was a ballot referendum, I think it was.
Yeah, we were down by 30 points, and we lost by less than 1%. And they never cloned there, so it was a victory in a way. They were so worried.
That's true.
They know the Stowers.
Yeah. I've been going this whole time thinking it was a failure, but you're right. They never really did do cloning there.
No, the Stowers Institute funded this campaign. They were set to make a lot of money. And thanks to some celebrities like Jeff Suppan and Jim Caviezel and Rush Limbaugh and others, and hard people worked so hard like you, they came back from over 30 points in 30 days and barely lost. And they realized that if there was an informed electorate, they would lose, and so they never spent the money to develop a cloning in Missouri. And that's what's great about
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I've been going this whole time thinking we were big failures. We weren't. This is so great.
No, and let me tell you about this. So in 2000, right before this campaign, Steve McAvity asked me to go work on that campaign. And I said, Steve, he's a movie producer, big movie producer, The Passion of the Christ. He said, you need to go work on that campaign, and they're losing by 30 points, and you need to run the get out the vote effort. We're going to run a side get out the vote effort. And I said, Steve, I've never lost a race, and I don't plan on losing. There's just no way you can win there, and I'm not going to have a L on my record. And he said, some hills are worth dying on. Go to Missouri and work as hard as you can. And at the end of the day, I feel like we did win because there was no cloning that was done there. And it'll be swept away if they ever tried.
That's awesome.
So they never tried. So
I love your competitive nature. I'm also extremely competitive. I don't like to lose, but Steve is absolutely right. There are some losses that are worth taking, and to know that, failing forward is absolutely a tangible strategy in many ways.
Well, let's talk. I want to talk about this generation that you work with that you say are so great. And when I look at the energy that's coming from young people today, I've never seen anything like it. And I believe, and I've said this publicly, I said in the introduction to your book, that I believe that Students for Life of America is the most important pro-life organization in the world, really in the world, because we set the agenda for the world. But it has to be very challenging because with technology changing, I feel like young people today they're so much different than from you and I. Like I would probably have more in common with the Pilgrims than I would with a young person going through school today.
Sometimes I feel the same way. Don't feel bad. This is a whole new generation, and it can be really challenging. But you are right. I mean, you can see the energy, you can see the momentum. It's not this, immeasurable force. We were out there every decision day since the end of March until the day the Dobbs decision came down a few weeks ago. We were there every day waiting for this decision to drop. It wasn't, it wasn't the older generation that gave up work, gave up sleep, who stood out there in the rain and the sleet and the sun to do it. It was this younger generation. And I think it speaks to the power of and the behind this generation and the excitement behind this generation to be a part of this historic moment, this force for good, throughout the world, not just, here in America, as you said, but the example that we're setting throughout the rest of the world, that you can walk back, your egregious abortion laws in your country that are ending, preborn human life. And I think when you look at the history of social movements, particularly the civil rights movement, there were many different factions, different strategies, different beliefs, different leaders, but they relied so heavily on young people and the energy and the passion that young people bring to these movements. And I think it speaks to the power and the importance of exactly what we're doing at this moment.
Help us understand this generation, because they're different. I went to give a speech at a university for one of your clubs, and a young woman picked me up, and she had the rainbow flag and the pink and brown flag and the upside down triangle, right? And I don't even know what it was. She was like a general of social justice. I don't know. I didn't know all the badges that she had won in combat, but she had a lot. And I was kind of like, where am I? Is it ever being? What's that?
You're going to get me in trouble.
No, but I adore them. But so what are the streams that are coming? I mean, that's one of the things I admired about you, that Students for Life of America, you have allowed, or I don't know if you allowed, I mean, you have no choice about it, really. I mean, their diversity, it's so diverse, the pro-life movement. But especially,
we try to foster that conversation for sure. It is diverse. I would say, when you come to the National Pro-Life Summit, the world's largest pro-life conference, that you've spoken at many times, that we host every year, the day after the March for Life, and yes, it's still happening in 2023, TBD for 2024 and beyond, the timing on it. But, you go to that conference, and it sells out, and so, this huge pro-life event, you will see a lot of white, conservative Christian kids. Absolutely. But that's not all who's there. And it's very surprising too. There's been a lot of media articles written in the past couple of weeks and couple of months of who the pro-life movement is, how the heck the pro-life movement pulled off this historic victory, because, a lot of the mainstream media for so long, and they tried very hard to ignore us. And so now they realize they can't ignore us, and actually ignoring us was probably not a very good strategy on their part. And so there's been a lot of articles written about, yes, there's a lot of white Christian conservatives, but it's not all white Christian conservatives. I would say, the majority of our student leaders, the majority of students at our events are female. It's a great place to go if you're a young man looking for a pro-life lady. I swear, I always joke I should just start a pro-life dating website. I could make millions off of it.
Well, the conference, I feel it's like 3-to-1 women or more, maybe even.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the makeup of our student group leaders, you're looking, 75% plus are female leaders.
Very Latino, too. I mean, is that the expression?
Very Latino.
Yeah, I mean, very Latino, the movement.
Yeah, very Latino. We've got a lot of Catholic students, obviously, whether they're culturally Catholic or practicing Catholic. But we do get students who come in who are atheists, who are agnostic. Many of those students were raised in Christian homes, have started to doubt their Christian faith, but they haven't lost that worldview feeling that, a human life is special, and that it's worthy of protection. So it does vary. I would say, many of the students, these are not, I struggle sometimes in meetings in Washington, D.C. I'll be in a coalition meeting on a certain political issue that, is related to the pro-life movement, but not directly about abortion. And, people are like, Kristan, can't you get your students just to do this? I'm like, well, you don't understand my students. The students that we work with, many of them consider themselves to be politically independent. Some of them will go as far as to say that they're liberal.
Libertarians. But these are, it's all over the place.
Libertarians. Oh, yeah, it's absolutely all over the place. The main thing that we care about, what we've been really focused very hard on, is you can give yourself a lot of labels, but the label that we care about, the one that you should take most seriously, is this label of anti-abortion. And when you go to vote, like, you can be a atheist, Democrat, vegan, whatever, but when you vote, you better vote pro-life first, because we know this is not merely a political issue. But we know politics, and I think has been perfectly demonstrated by the success we just had at the Supreme Court. Politics and what happens in politics has the power to save millions of lives. And it goes hand in hand with culture change. We have to continue to change the culture, but we can't be shooting ourselves in the foot saying, well, we're going to only focus on service or changing minds one-on-one on person. And I'm going to continue to vote for people who do make it harder for the pro-life movement, and in fact want the pro-life movement to be silenced. You can't do it. You can't have it both ways. You're either all in or you're not. And so we've worked very hard to make that very clear to our students, that to be pro-life means you're fully pro-life.
Yeah, and one of the things that SFLA was the first, and you may be the only group that does this, you're very adamant in saying that we are an anti-abortion organization. What you're taking away from that is the ambiguity. Was that by design so that there's no drift?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in market research and polling research with young people, we call them mushy middle, or the more polite term, I guess, to be movable middle, 18 to 34-year-olds, about the issue of abortion itself, as well as the pro-life movement. And I have to tell you, the pro-life movement has a very bad brand. It has a bad rap. And so, one of the things that we strategically focus on in our strategies is really repairing the brand of the movement, showing the narrative of who we are and what we do as a pro-life movement. The reason I will use anti-abortion interchangeably with pro-life is, one, there's mass confusion by design because of the pro-abortion movement as to what pro-life means. So a lot of people just generally have no clue on campus. So if you're tabling, trying to start a pro-life group and saying, hey, do you want to come to my pro-life group? People will be like, wait, which one's this? It's much easier just to say anti-abortion. I also think it's important to keep saying that word abortion because, as we heard, President Biden, just announced his executive order, his do nothing burger of an executive order, trying to placate his liberal base, trying to give Democrats something to run on besides Biden's inflation. And, he did this whole, it was like a 20-minute speech and never said the word abortion. Never said the word abortion. So what is it that we're talking about? Oh, yeah, we're talking about ending the life of babies, of innocent babies. But as long as they don't say the word abortion, it all sounds good. Freedom, choice, reproductive health, women's health care, women's empowerment. Those are things all of us like. Oh, those are things that every human being is like, yeah, cool, awesome for that. But they never say what it is, and it's abortion.
Is it? I see that the Biden administration is just really scrambling to try to deal with this overturning of Roe versus Wade, and they're backtracking, they're zigzagging. Just 2 days ago, I don't know if you heard, I don't know if it was Biden himself or his spokesperson said that the pro-choice movement's out of touch with the average voter. Did you hear about that?
I did not hear about that, but they obviously are out of touch with the average voter. They don't, and that's what I've been reading some really interesting. There was my favorite New York Times article ever was written about, it's like learning the lessons from the terrible triumph of the pro-life movement. And they talked specifically about Students for Life, about, reaching out to young people. They actually quoted a book that I read early on, Students for Life, called The Making of the Pro-Life Activist by Dr. Saeed Munson. And it lays out, it's like this woman actually for the first time understands what our strategy is. And the point was of this article, and there's been a couple others, like, wow, these pro-life young people are online, they're in person, and they intentionally seek out to have conversations with those who disagree with them. And they were making the point to their base that as these and this is so very true, I see it all the time, pro-abortion activists, the pro-abortion movement, they won't have a conversation with you on campus. They call you a bigot, they call you racist, they shut down conversation, and they never have.
They're violent.
They have lost all.
They vandalize.
Yeah, they have, and as a result of that, they never have a chance to even try. I mean, not that they can't convert because truth is on our side. It's called science, but they never even have an opportunity to convert. And that's what these, pro-choice reporters are saying. Wait a minute, we have a problem here. These people are going out trying to make pro-life advocates. They go to pro-choice audiences and try to make advocates, and we only talk to ourselves. That is exactly why you've seen all of these self-reflective articles in the news, and I've been reading them all as much as I can, because they truly do not understand. They do not understand why somebody would be against Roe versus Wade, why someone would celebrate Roe versus Wade. Like it's completely, counter to their entire worldview and leaves them aghast. And they don't understand why they don't know, because they are radically out of touch. They only talk to themselves. I mean, I'm always talking to someone who disagrees with me, always. Whether it's a pro-lifer who disagrees with me about something I said or strategy or tactics Students for Life is employing, who makes it very, very clear how much they disagree with me, or it's a pro-abortion person who found, something we did online, read something, watched a video, or met me on a campus at speech. I'm constantly hearing from the other side.
Yeah, and you listen to them respectfully. One of the things I'll never understand, I'll be at a family party and some distant relative who's been waiting years to pounce on me, I'm sure this happens to you, will head across the room and out of nowhere, how have you been? Good to see your family. And then just launches into this pro-abortion screed.
Yep.
And then when I respond, when I listen respectfully and I don't get upset or angry, because I'm not shocked to find someone on earth that disagrees with me, even if it's the issue that's most important to me and I've been working on for over 30 years, I can listen, not get angry, not unfriend them from social media. And this is an issue they don't even ever think about. It's just one in a constellation of issues that they're outraged over. And yet they're so close-minded and so militant and so white-fisted on their opinion. Why is that? I've never understood why, a middle-aged
it's the us versus
man.
Them. I mean, it's yeah. I know. It's one, you have to think about the post-abortion syndrome as well. I mean, you know this. I mean, you've met these people.
I am these people.
A lot of them is angry. You are these people, but I wouldn't classify you as this. The most angry, deranged people I meet, whether it's at the Supreme Court or on the campus, are usually post-abortive. They have an abortion story. They have something, abortion in their past. And to hear somebody say that abortion is wrong or abortion should be ended, to them is a slap in the face. It's us, basically confirming these innermost feelings that they have had, that they did something wrong when they participated or went and had or paid for an abortion. And that in order to feel good and feel okay with that decision they made, they need everybody to validate what they did. Yeah. And I think that's what helps me not get upset or outraged or angry back at a lot of people. I realize that we have a nation of walking wounded people, and we're probably speaking to a lot of them who are post-abortive, and that's what makes hearing our message so hard for them. And I think the other thing is, I think, to be honest with you, liberals have done a very good job of taking, Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals and getting those out there. The us versus the have versus the have-nots. I mean, President Obama was a freaking master at this. I mean, when he would talk and how he would talk about, them, the liberals versus the, crazy conservatives who were anti-science, he was very, very good at that. And I think you could definitely see a ratcheting up of the us versus them mentality. And that's and a part of, socialist social change, and what they're trying to get to is they have to, for their revolution, they have to have people at each other's throats. They have to have people hating one another. Because only then will you get people demanding change, demanding something else, demanding somebody who will come in and you fix all of these problems.
Well, I want to talk to you about that anti-science slur against us. You were on CNN, I think it was over maybe 10 days ago, and you were debating the CNN host. And when I watched that debate, I thought, whoa, you looked like you'd been preparing your whole life to handle this question. And the professional broadcaster seemed lost. And I thought, they didn't know they were in a fight. Or they thought they were the Harlem Globetrotters and we were the team that was supposed to play them and just lose. And they thought that was the game. And they thought this was WWE professional wrestling. They didn't realize they were in a fight. They did not show up. They did not prepare to even defend their positions. Were you shocked on that interview? It just how easily you wiped the floor with the host?
Well, it's funny. It's so funny to hear you describe it that way. So Students for Life took the clip and we put of me on CNN, the first CNN interview I did. That was 11 minutes. And by the way, that set, it was supposed to be a 3-minute interview. So there was no preparation for me going. I thought it was just like a quick one-off, my reaction of Dobbs.
You have your you had your blocking and bridge. If they ask this question, this is what I'm going to say. It's only 1 minute.
Oh yeah. I had no idea I was going into this huge debate thing. So anyway, I put that clip up on Students for Life YouTube, and then CNN put it on their YouTube. So our views got hundreds of thousands. Their video got hundreds of thousands. If you read the comments on our video, it was like just like what you said. Oh my gosh, this pro-life girl wiped the floor. They have no idea what they're talking about. Blah blah blah. If you read the CNN comments, what a moron! I'm outraged that CNN would give this extremist any time. She had no idea. This moron had no idea, referring to me, had no idea what she was talking about. Wow, the CNN anchor did a great job of taking her down, holding her accountable for her lies. We can't even agree on basic facts that I won that debate.
Well, but she was, not only did you clearly win the debate, she just seemed lost and confused, like a little kid thrown out of a boat.
She had someone talking in her ear, so she had a producer feeding her stuff while it was going. I wish I really would have had somebody feeding me stuff while I was going, but she had a producer. No,
you couldn't have done better.
This is a comeback. But yeah, no, it was very interesting that I cited a study. 95%. I think I messed up. I said 96. I think it's 95% of biologists from the University of Chicago. This was a man who did a study. He had surveyed 5,000 or so biologists, asking them when life began, and this was part of his dissertation. He actually was awarded his PhD for this.
Yeah, who was he? He's been on my show before. What's his name? I know I've had him on.
I don't remember his name.
I'm going to have him back on. You need to have him on.
I know. As soon as it was over, I was looking it up. I was like, all right, I was right? Because University of Chicago. But it was funny because, then she was just arguing, well, I'm going to verify that study. I'm like, okay, you can go ahead and verify. I don't watch CNN, but I don't watch TV in general, but I'd really like to see, did she do a follow-up segment? Because she kept saying that my study that I cited was false. But they deny
that she didn't even read. But she didn't even read it. No, she didn't know it existed, but it was false. Yeah. But it was false. Trust the science, but it was false.
Because she went into, then she said, well, so-and-so people believe that, abortion shouldn't be committed at viability. I'm like, okay, but viability isn't conception. Viability isn't when science believes, life begins. Viability is when, because of our technology, because of all that we can do, that's when a human child can be delivered and most likely survive. That is viability. That is not the redefining of the definition of when life begins. But I'm like, they have been gaslighting us for decades, and it's actually now it's being proven. For decades, we have been saying in the pro-life movement, hey, there's a problem, because in 1965, the American College of OBGYNs changed the definition of pregnancy from, when life begins, when egg and sperm unite, unique whole living DNA code comes into existence, i.e. a human being comes into existence, they change its implantation. So we've been saying for years, hey, there's a problem with chemical hormonal contraceptives, because on the back of the box and inside the big black and white piece of paper that folds out to be like huge, it literally says can prevent a fertilized ovum or egg, or i.e. if you Google fertilized egg, we'll put into Google, it comes up embryo, because there's no such thing as or you can call it fertilized egg, but once an egg is fertilized, the part is met with the sperm, the part from the man, that unique genetic code has come to existence. When we've been saying, wait a minute, and how many times do those hormonal contraceptives in human life? When we've been talking about IVF for years, like, hey, we have a problem. Not that you're making babies. We love babies being made. Pro-lifers are the biggest baby makers I know. But wait a minute, you're creating human beings in a lab. More than 90% of those human beings that are created in a lab never take a breath because they are lost. They're thrown away because of the genetic code. They're frozen, and they never are unfrozen, or when they're thawed out, they die in the thawing out process. Like, this is a problem. And we've been told for years, like, you're crazy. This isn't a thing. What's the first question I get asked now on like every single interview? Well, are you pro-lifers going to try to take away IVF? Why are you asking me that question, Mr. Media Person? Oh, that's right, because you acknowledge that IVF kills human life, even though it's not intentional, mostly, unless they're screening out human embryos with children who have cystic fibrosis, and my children are Down syndrome. They just screen them out because they're eugenicists. But now they all acknowledge what we've been saying for decades, that yes, human life does begin at conception, and we are doing other things beyond abortion in our culture that end those human lives.
Well, do they believe it though? Like that host, she knows when the biological beginning of human life is, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does.
She's just lying.
They all believe it.
So they're lying.
They don't understand their own philosophy. What they're arguing, what they're trying to say is, because this is unrefutable, right? Like, this is, unless you're an absolute moron who just likes to just not believe science, it is unrefutable that life begins at conception. What she's arguing is that life is not worthy of protection, that life is not valuable.
Are they going to start saying that? So there's this great book. Well, maybe it's not a great book.
I wish they would, because it would make it a lot faster in my debates to get to the main point. I mean, that's what's so frustrating, is most of the time in the pro-life movement, we have to argue this already proven fact, when the thing that we really have to make the case to, and this, which is, to be honest with you, is a harder argument to make, is why human life is valuable, especially in our culture today. And with your work at Vulnerable People Project, this is worldwide, how human life is not considered valuable.
And that's the problem. That's why I always tell folks, protecting the child in the womb at home is where we begin to protect all vulnerable communities around the world. Because if we assent to the idea that you can leave certain people outside of protection, then why shouldn't China use Uyghur slaves to make our Nike shoes? Yep. Why are Uyghur worthy of protection? I only know I have a couple minutes with you. So here's my question, my final question, because you have your pulse on the youth and where they're the future. They've lost the debate on science. They can't. I should say this. There is no debate. They cannot contain it, especially with young people who are forming their opinions, who the first picture they have of themselves is a beautiful picture of them in the womb with the new technology. Right. So they've lost them. They've lost the science. They're making religious arguments. I have heard more arguments that this is violating the rights of Satanists than I have them address Dobbs, because they haven't addressed any of the opinions on Dobbs. So they're ignoring science, which they can't contain that information from spreading, because I knew it in the 70s and 80s. I'd seen the book, A Child is Born, and that book made it self-evident to me as a kid in 1979, 80. They are now appealing to religious arguments that, well, this is violating Satanists' rights because child sacrifice is part of their ritual. Okay.
Yeah, you know what? Go for it, media. Keep making that case.
Right? No. I mean, I'm not making this up,
child sacrifice.
Have you seen this?
No, yeah, I've seen it.
Okay, so how, but I don't, ever underestimate a powerful industry like the abortion industry. So what is a weakness, or what's something we need to worry about now that the door to a culture of life has been open with the overturning of Roe versus Wade?
Yeah.
What worries you, or what threats are we facing that you see with young people?
The things I worry about chemical abortion, and largely the pro-life movement hasn't been paying attention to the threat of chemical abortion. It's over half of all abortions. It's going to be soon 75-90% of all abortions. These are first trimester abortions. As a movement, we focused on praying and protesting in front of abortion facilities and sidewalk advocacy in front of abortion facilities. We're focusing on shutting down these abortion facilities, of targeting, state laws to make it harder for abortionists to do business. That all goes out the window when your daughter in Mississippi, that might have banned abortion, can order abortion pills on their phone and have an abortion right in your bathroom, and you never know about it. This is a major problem for our movement, and one that I think largely our movement is behind on, because quite frankly, a lot of Christians don't understand what's happening. I have had so many questions of, wait a minute, chemical abortion pills, is that plan B? What's plan B? And so there's a lot of people out there who are largely with us on the issue, but don't understand it. And we've got to do a massive education campaign to our own base about what is chemical contraception, what is plan B, and what is chemical abortion pills. And these are vastly different things, right? Yes, can plan B end human life? Absolutely. They admit it on the back of the box. Is that the intention of the women who take plan B? Most likely not. They're trying to prevent, the egg from being, ovulation from occurring. But it can end human life. Can chemical hormonal contraception end human life? It can. We don't know the percentage. It could be rare, but we know breakthrough ovulation occurs from women who are on the birth control pills, so we know it happens. That's not the intention, but it can happen. Chemical abortion pill, 100% the intention is end human life. But the church is not ready to respond with that. The other thing that I'm nervous about is, the overall messaging. The whole pro-lifers don't care about women. They don't care about babies after they're born, which we all know is absolute bullshit. There's more than 30,000 pregnancy resource centers, more than 400 maternity homes that our movement has been supporting, sustaining for nearly 5 decades. The problem that we know at Students for Life is knocked on 120,000 doors in 20 neighborhoods surrounding abortion facilities in the past year and a half. 73% of people we talk to do not know pregnancy centers exist, even though they've been existing in our community for decades, because many in the pregnancy center movement, are very fearful of, being attacked, or their building being vandalized, or, getting too closely associated with those radicals like Kristan Hawkins. But in return, what happens is no one knows that they exist. This is a major problem when you think of the narrative, because you have Christians sitting in the pews right now, abortion's this main topic of conversation, who want to say that they're pro-life, who want to say they're against abortion, but then they don't want to get attacked for not caring about women. So until they know, until they can feel proud of their own movement that they're a part of, they're not going to speak out. You're going to have politicians who are, a lot of state politicians now who are getting to the point where they're going to have to they can't just say, well, I can't pass that pro-life law because, we're waiting on the Supreme Court. Now it's going to come down to them. It's going to be their churches, their businesses, that get protested, something they've never thought they would have to do before. Those guys, those women are going to have to, once again, feel proud of this pro-life movement and say, wait a minute, there are all these resources. There is this social safety net. No woman stands alone in post-Roe America, because the pro-life movement is still standing with her, even, and so that has to be done. I think we have to be careful about this, because the moment we're entering is there's going to be a compromise. And so there was an op-ed written a couple years ago in the New York Times by David Brooks, not a pro-life guy, kind of politically, because in today's world, probably politically.
He wants to be, David Brooks is one of those guys who wants to be liked by everybody.
Yeah, but his article, if the pro-abortion movement would actually read it and take his advice, would be very hard for us to combat. Because his idea was, for Democrats to win the Rust Belt states and conservative states, moderate on abortion, propose a compromise on abortion, give the pro-lifers third and second trimester abortions, which is all the politicians like to talk about. Give them that. Say you agree on that front. Get abortions only legal in the first trimester, which is how it is in most of the world, like in Europe. And that's still vast majority of abortions, 90% of abortions. And you'll shut down their movement.
Look at Europe.
Politicians won't know what to say. Yeah,
it's hard to grow the pro-life movement in Europe because that's where they are.
It's so hard. It's so hard, and their movement has been devastated. And one of it's because they don't have the First Amendment right to free speech like we do. They don't have the same community structure. They don't have the power of the churches because they're largely an unchurched population. Yes, there are those demographic factors. But a big part is there was a compromise struck and it killed their movement. And what's very fearful to me is that many pro-lifers, and I'm not going to name names, but there's organizations, leaders out there who I love and I respect who've fallen into this trap of only wanting to talk about third trimester, late term, or pain-capable abortion. And while it's great if we pass a law that stops abortions at 15 weeks like Florida did, they should have done more. Florida had the vote. Ron DeSantis wants to do something like take on the mask. He could do it, but yet we didn't. And so we could have had a heartbeat bill that stopped abortions at heartbeat in 6 weeks. We could have had a conception act.
See, this is why I love that you're at the helm of Students for Life of America. Because I love this because if you're if you're heartbeat or better, then the rest of the movement has to say heartbeat or better. There's nothing these organizations can do. So you're going to move the ball, I believe. Yeah. And by the way,
we have moved the ball federally. We've seen some movement, but it's going to come up. Representative McCarthy, who will be the new Speaker of the House, came out a couple of weeks ago and said he's for a 15-week bill. So today I'll be saying, no, that's not what we want. We want heartbeat or better, and that should be the minimum. And we have to keep putting. We can't. There is a wing in the pro-life movement who thinks we should shut up right now. So we should be very quiet. We shouldn't say anything because we're worried about the 2022 election. And I think being quiet is the absolute wrong thing to do. You never see the left. When they get one victory, do they be quiet? Do they suddenly get quiet about what they want to do? Think about how fast the transgender movement has moved in our country. That wasn't because they got one little victory and then were quiet for 2 years while elections happened. It's because they never stop. They always demand more. They always move forward. We have to learn those lessons, and we have to play by that rule book.
I agree. And that's where the youth are. By the way, heartbeat or better, just culturally, getting people saying heartbeat, heartbeat, heartbeat. What, heartbeat?
Yeah.
There's a heartbeat?
Heartbeat is a consensus issue. I mean, I've been hearing people like, consensus issue is 15 weeks, or consensus issue is banning abortions at pain. Guess what? When you poll, you ask people, do you think abortion should be committed when a child is a beating heart? Over 50%. Every poll you do says no. Now, when you go back and have to tell them, well, if it's 6 weeks, people go, well, I don't know now. That could affect me. But the word heartbeat, showing the humanity of the child, how this child has a beating heart, that abortion is only no success if the beating heart of a child stops, that's significant.
Yeah, and you talk about this wing of the pro-life movement that's hedging. We would have had no success. They've hedged on every success we've ever had.
Yep.
So I would like I'm going to try to get some of those, especially those never Trumpers. And I don't know about you, but in 2016, I was not a never Trumper, but I voted for him, but I was so skeptical of his pro-life conversion.
Oh, me too.
But there were these pro-life quote unquote leaders that have opposed Trump. They still do. And they said Roe isn't worth it. Roe isn't worth Trump. What? Are you? I don't, for the life of me. And there was one woman who wrote an op-ed. I don't know if you saw it, where she said that we shouldn't have won this way, or we would won this way. What way would you like to have won? Well, what does that even? I don't even know what that means. They would have liked to win with Mitt Romney. If Mitt Romney would have ever given us our judges. So I see that there's going to be an eruption of pro-life Democrats, and then that may move things. Do you see that there'll be a rise of pro-life Democrats now that the abortion industry, can you believe there are 500,000 elected offices in the United States, 7,000 state representatives. The abortion industry is not going to be able to sit on the neck of 7,000 state representatives the way they sat on Congress.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if there's competition for Republicans, they'll move in the right direction.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw some. I lost friends this spring where we saw pro-life state legislators, committee chairs, 20-year veterans in state houses who refused to move our pro-life bills this spring, chemical abortion bills defunding University of Pittsburgh because they refused to stop their barbaric research where they're, dissecting aborted babies with beating hearts while they're still living. And we just did, spend a couple $1,000s, did some voter education in their district about what these, supposed pro-life champions had done. And those guys lost their primaries. And I've got some establishment, pro-life organizations not so happy with me because they lost a friend. They lost somebody they could call. But guess what? That friend wasn't doing jack. He wasn't doing his job. He wasn't doing what he promised to do. And this is the pain. We're going to have to show folks, like, if you say that you're pro-life and you don't do what you promised to do, there will be pain, and we will educate your voters, and we will tell them what's actually going on. The days of you just saying you're pro-life and doing nothing are absolutely over. And the pro-life generation, particularly this very diverse generation of Republicans, Independents, and Democrats, are more than willing to show the hypocrisy on all sides of the political aisle.
Yeah, no. My mentor, State Representative Mark Moses, when I was young, chief of staff for him in the 90s, he had said to me, I said something about, we don't want to alienate this person, we need their vote, and committee on something. He said, Jason, it's not about winning their friendship. He said, you can get friends, really close friends, to do something for you that goes against their ambition from time to time. But what it really comes down to is your ability to exact retribution or support their ambition. And we need to let this person know that we can get in between them and their their goals, that we can exact retribution if they don't vote the way that he goes, that's our job. Not to coddle him, but let him know that there's a cost for crossing us. And
that's exactly right.
And that's what the pro-life movement, I think, has finally learned, right? I think that we've learned and we've demonstrated that we can exact retribution, and we have on elected officials who counted on us, who mouthed pieties to us, who smiled. I mean, for too long, we as a movement they'd bring us in their office and tell us how they loved Mother Teresa and their oldest child was adopted from Guatemala. And we'd go, oh, you're so pro-life. But the dairy industry wouldn't do that. If you went into the dairy industry if the dairy industry went into a congressman's office and the guy's like, hey, you want some milk? I love milk. Hey, look, there's a picture of a cow on my wall. I love Wisconsin. Have you been to Wisconsin Dells? Like, that's not going to sell the dairy industry. They're going to go, sit down, shut up. We got to talk about some bills here. But that we've been too simple. And that's what I get from not just you, but your organization. All these young people, as I see them in the media doing interviews or follow them on Instagram, is they are not willing to give an inch, and they are triumphalistic. Do you think Roe versus Wade is just going to, it's like it's put some wind in their sails?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, is that your dog?
Yeah, that's one of them. My kids are just waking up, so it's going to get really loud. So I better get going. Jason.
You get going. Give them Lucky Charms. Explicitly Pro-Life is your podcast.
Yes.
And what else? Where else can people follow you and your organization?
StudentsForLife.org, StudentsLifeAction.org. I would encourage folks to check out StandingWithHerSunday.org. Sunday, August 28th, we're having this major event. We're trying to get folks to host this free live simulcast in church or in your small group, where we will be kind of giving the church the virtual tool belt of all the resources and support, all the social safety net that the pro-life movement has developed in the past 40 years, and how you can help women and kind of directly get involved in your community, helping women and families, facing unplanned pregnancy situations. So I'd love to get folks to sign on to Standing With Her Sunday.
What's that website again?
StandingWithHerSunday.org.
StandingWithHerSunday.org. I will put that in the show notes.
Senator James Lankford. If folks know John Stone Street from Chuck Colson Center for Worldview, Turning Point Faith. We've got a bunch of different groups. I kind of went beyond the traditional quote-unquote pro-life movement for this event, because we've got so many folks we need to educate and we need to reach, across the conservative Christian of movements out there.
Well, I think that's wonderful. I will put it in the show notes. And I think you're probably trying to flee to the next state, 2 steps ahead of the J6 Commission or whatever you're fleeing from.
Yeah. No, I'm not fleeing from anyone. But okay, thank you, Jason.
God bless you. Aloha.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, that is Kristan Hawkins is the hardest working person I've ever met in my life. Yet she never looks tired. I don't work that hard. I look tired all the time. I don't know what that is. But this episode has been brought to you by MyPillow.com. Go to MyPillow.com, use the code Jones, get the best pillow in the world. You got the pillow, get the sheets. You got the sheets. Step it up to the mattress topper. And the slippers right now are, I think, the lowest price ever. When you use the code Jones on the promotional square, the radio listener square, you put the code Jones in there, and you're going to get those discounts. Also, Epoch Times. Go to iReadEpoch.com, get the digital and print subscription. And Epoch Times needs to be the first place you go every morning. And as always, this episode is being brought to you by the Vulnerable People Project, standing in solidarity with the most vulnerable people in the world when it is most challenging. This week, we are putting security cameras up, and we've hired security guards to protect students at schools in several cities across Afghanistan. This is part of our commitment to standing with those who've been made vulnerable by the catastrophic, botched, ham-fisted retreat from Afghanistan that Biden gave. Hunter Biden's dad gave it. Did you see Hunter Biden's latest videos? Oh, my. First thing I saw this morning. My friend sent it to me. Oh, my. Really unbelievable. Anyways, if you want to stand with us as we stand with the most vulnerable people in the world, go to thegreatcampaign.org and become a monthly donor. All right. 49 days in a row marches on tomorrow, and where I believe we'll be interviewing Karen England, all right, on the kitchen cabinet. How to have your own little kitchen cabinet to create change, political change in your community. So until tomorrow, been Jason Jones with Kristan Hawkins. Aloha.
This has been the Jason Jones Show, powered by Mudhouse Media.